Okay, Alan, let's go ahead and go through this. So, the first thing you want to do is if your photo scan software is not looking, the interface is not looking like mine, if you go up to Tools, Preferences, and then under Theme, choose the classic theme, and that way it'll look just like mine does. So, first thing we want to do is go to Workflow, Add Photos, select the photos you sent me on WeTransfer, open. And the next step we're going to do is say Workflow, Align Photos. And in this dialog box, you can see I have Accuracy Medium, Generic Pre-Selection, Key Point Limit 50,000, Tie Point Limit 4,000. And then you want to choose, make sure the Adaptive Camera Model Fitting is also clicked. Going to let it do its thing. Okay, and now we can see in the window here, we can see our model. Okay, it's fairly small because there's not a lot of pixels that are being involved, but we can turn it around. We can see that it's in there. If we go up here, we can click Show Cameras. That will show us where the camera was in each of the pictures you took. Not too bad of a spread. If we look over here in chunk 2, ignore chunk 1, that was from something else. Chunk 2, you can see there are 37 cameras total, and 37 of 37 have aligned themselves. So once we've done that, our next step is to actually go ahead and turn the model so that it's facing in its proper orientation. This will help us orient a bounding box around it, which will let us limit the area within the photographs that PhotoScan will look to create the dense cloud. So because I had some things turned off for something else I was doing, let me go in and make sure that I click on Show Region. And I want to make sure that I have Show Trackball and Show Info. Okay. Now, to make this the easiest, what we want to do is make sure that we're in ortho mode. Right now we're in perspective mode. To change between perspective and ortho mode, you can go up here to View, and then click on perspective or orthographic to toggle, or you can press the 5 key, not the F5 but the 5 key, and you can do this either on the strip above the letters or on the numeric keypad. So if I hit that, then this now changes to orthographic. The next thing we want to do is press the number 7 key. Number 7 will change your 3D icon over here on the right so that Y is up, X is to the right, and Z is coming out of the screen at you. So you are going to be, this is a top-down viewpoint for your model. I'm going to turn the cameras off to make it easier to see what we're doing. Zoom in here a little bit. Okay. And then to rotate the model itself, we want to go up here to the menu bar, and we want to get the Rotate Object, which is the pyramid with the arrows around it. You can see the bounding box went away, and now we have our trackball with a green axis and a red axis. If I hover to the red highlights and click on it and hold the left mouse button down, I can now rotate just along that axis. So it's rotating things around the x-axis, which, as you can see on the right, the x-axis is the red axis. Now it's down below my trackball, so to make life easier, I'm going to press down on the center wheel of my mouse, holding it down, and then drag or pan the model back up into the middle of the trackball. I'm now going to, now that I have it roughly aligned where I'm looking straight down on the model, I'm now going to press the 1 key in order to get to a front view of the model. And I can see that it's not quite aligned because here's my plane of your table that it was on. So if I move this up a little bit, see there, and then I'm going to also rotate around using the 6 key. Now we'll rotate it to the right, and we're fairly decently aligned. And again, I'm just rotating them around the center point, pressing the 6 key on the numeric keypad or up on top of the keyboard. I'm going to go back to the top view, and then I'm going to click way out here to the right, hold down the left mouse button, and then just pull and that's going to rotate. I let go, clicked again, hold, pull, and that's just rotating around the Z-axis now. So now when I go to the front view, I'm looking straight in on the model. And if I turn it to the right, you can see we're on the right side of the model. Okay, that has aligned the model to our coordinate systems. Now what we want to do is we want to align our bounding box, or the region, to that same system. So I'm going to go up here and say rotate region. And now you can see that my region is kind of wonky. So I'm going to click on the blue circle, turn till it's basically gets rid of the jagged edge in the pixels. I'm going to do the same thing this direction, and then the same thing this direction. Now you can see that I can't see double lines for the most part around the outside of my bounding box. I can change the size of my bounding box by clicking on the region or resize region icon. And all I'm doing is clicking in the corners and moving it in to shrink it down to the minimal amount of space with a little bit of buffer around the object that we want PhotoScan to focus its attention on in the dense cloud process. Turn it to the right using the 6 key again. Over here. Shrink that in. What this is going to do, it really is going to speed up processing time on the dense cloud. So there we go. It's all nice and oriented. The one aspect that we have to fix though is that this shaded blue area, and I'm going to rotate so you can see that. This blue line here should be on the bottom of our model. So rotate those there. I'll rotate my region box, bringing that down and get it to the bottom. And then now I'm just going to resize again. Sorry about not noticing that that was to the side. That shaded part of the blue line of the region box tells PhotoScan what should be the bottom of your model. Okay, and again, I'm just going to shrink this in. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and to run the dense cloud. So we're going to go up to workflow, build dense cloud. Again, we're going to use a medium quality, and under advanced, we want to have depth filtering be aggressive. And then we're going to click OK. Let it do its thing. And the reason it's running so very fast, even though you have 37 cameras, is that because you crop the images, there's not a lot of pixels that it has to go through, because those are not that wide or high in terms of numbers of pixels. If you had 37 18 megapixel images and it was the full size of the image, that process would have taken a lot longer. Okay, now that our dense cloud is done, we can go up here and click on dense cloud, and we can see that it's done a fairly decent job of creating the model. Okay. Now, some things we want to do. This is the step when we want to edit our dense cloud. So we got a lot of garbage up here that's floating around, and you can see it's floating around on the sides and the front. We want to get rid of that at this point, because that's going to get built into the mesh if we don't get rid of it at the dense cloud stage. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I'm now going to go up here onto my toolbar and grab my selection tools, and I'm going to use freeform selection. To do this, I'm going to click, hold the left mouse button down, and then just select like you would maybe be selecting in Photoshop or some other graphic editing program. Again, this. Getting rid of most of it, and now I want to zoom in a little closer. Go back to my main arrow so that I can turn the model a little bit, see where I'm getting some more garbage stuck to the side. Click on my selection arrow again, come in here. Now from the looks of things, it looks as though there might have been an image or two that's not 100% aligned, because it looks up in here like I've got a nice cap to the head, but then I've got another plane coming off here that's a cap to the head. So it looks like maybe we have one image or two that's just not perfectly aligned in there, and it's causing a little bit of a double haloing effect. But we're going to leave that for B for now and just see how well things turn out. I'm going to get rid of some of this here. Get rid of some of this here. And again, to do that, I'm just holding down the left mouse button and dragging around. Now, the other thing that we want to get rid of is we want to get rid of a lot of this garbage down here at the bottom, which is the turntable's top. To do that, I'm going to turn the model to where I can see the edges of that. But I don't want to be able to catch the other side of the model. So you can see I have it turned that way. And I'm going to go ahead and take the selection tool and just come in here and get close, but not real tight, because you don't want to cut away things that you want to have in the model. And then each time that I get that highlighted pink, I'm just then deleting it by hitting the delete key on the keyboard. Again, back to my selection tool. Coming in here around while holding down the left mouse button. Again, if I had it sitting like this, I could potentially catch parts of the underlying model on the other side. So keep it like this, come in here. I just noticed in the model we can see there's a bit of a fin coming off the back here if you look right here, and I think again that's from that one or two misaligned images that are just slightly not where they should be. And so what I'm going to do is attempt, maybe not, let's see here, see if I can get it positioned in such a way that I can trim off some of that finning without catching model pieces that we want. Before I delete this time, now I'm going to go back to my arrow and turn and see how much of that I caught. And I think we'll be okay if I delete those. Okay, and then we got a little bit to clean up down right in here. And that should do it. Let me see what the top looks like. Top looks pretty good. Okay, so now we have our dense cloud edited. Still a little bit kind of wonky down the bottom, and a little bit wonky up here on top. Let's go ahead and cut out some of those. Again, those I believe are coming from that one or two images. It just isn't quite perfectly lined. Okay, so now we've got our dense cloud. Let's go ahead and run the mesh. Now when we go to build the mesh, we've got 195,000 points to work with in building our mesh. So when we build our mesh, we're going to go ahead and we're going to accept the defaults for the high quality mesh, and we want to make sure that it's using our dense cloud. We want to use our dense cloud here, and surface type arbitrary and advanced. Leave those settings at enabled for interpolation, and point classes all. Go ahead and hit OK. Okay, now we can go ahead and we can look at our mesh. We have two ways we can look at that. We can look at it colorized, which is a sort of false coloration based on colors of the individual vertices, or we can look at it here and see the underlying geometry. See, there's a little bit of a fin here. That was that extra material at the top. You can see sticking out a little bit. We didn't quite clean that well enough. But back here, there would have been that same effect along here. There would have been a fin sticking out if I hadn't trimmed out some of those points. And then on the bottom, because the size of the bottom was fairly small, it actually used that interpolation and closed the model for you. Oftentimes on a larger model, that won't fill in. You'd have a hole at the bottom. Okay, last step. Go to our workflow, go to build texture. The default is typically 4096 for a texture. We want generic mapping, mosaic blending mode, and for advanced, enable color correction and enable hole filling. Hit OK. It's now trying to figure out what to do with the various texture photographs. Create its atlas of where the pixels are located on the object. It's now going through and calculating its color correction to try to blend those textures, the differences in the lighting in each of the images. Now it's blending the texture. On a really big model with 80 or 90 photographs, all of which are 18 megapixels, the object's filling the frame, this texturing process could take anywhere from 20 minutes to a couple hours, particularly if you're doing the color corrections. So we're almost done. Sometimes you can trust its estimate, sometimes you can't, as to how long it's going to take yet. Okay, so it's done blended it. Now we can go up here to our toolbar and we can look at our textured model by clicking on the pyramid. It's got the colored image on it. And there is your resulting model. We can turn off our bounding box and turn off our trackball. And there's your completed model. It's not perfect because of one or two images I said were a little bit out of whack, but not too bad actually, and surprises me given that the images had been cropped. Well, I hope this helps you see how to walk through the process. One last thing I want to show you is how to export this so that you can upload it into Sketchfab. So if you want to export your model, now that it's been properly aligned in those earlier steps, we can go up here to File, go to Export Model. I'm going to create a folder to put these into because it's going to create multiple files that you'll need. So let's see, Model Export. Make sure you choose Object OBJ, which is one of the sort of standard interchange formats for 3D models. Click Save. You want to make sure Vertex Normals is checked and Export Texture. These should already be checked, but if not, make sure those are checked. And JPEG is what I tend to use. I'm going to hit OK. It's done. If we go and look in that model export, we have three folders. We have the OBJ file, we have the repro head material, which is a file that tells it how to project the texture onto the model, and then the repro head texture, and this is sort of what is the plastic that then gets shrink wrapped onto your model. So the last thing you need to do to upload this into Sketchfab is to select all three of these and place them into a zip folder. So I'm going to use my 7-zip program to add them to a zip archive. And for this purpose, I'll just let it take model, export zip. Sketchfab expects your material header file, and your object to be in a zip file to bring them up. Then going to go into Sketchfab. And then since it automatically logged me in, you would make sure you're logged in your account, go to upload, choose file, go and go to where I had your files. Sketchfab's going to go ahead and bring that in. It's going to upload it and then it's going to process it, and that can take some time. We'll see how fast it goes here. So I'm just going to leave this default. You can type your description in this area. You can select categories, so you might select cultural heritage and history, etc. Make that go away. And then hit continue. And now it's going to process the model. As I said, this can also be a lengthy process depending on the size of your model and how much processing is taking place on the Sketchfab servers at the time. If you're doing it sometimes in the middle of the night, it goes very quickly. Other times it can take a long time. So when it comes into Sketchfab, you're going to want to go to 3D settings. We're going to straighten the model. Okay, I hit it the wrong way. So I rotate it around the x-axis there, and then I'm going to maybe kind of turn it like this. Get it looking sort of okay. Personally, I like a black background, so I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom, go to background, go to color, and choose a black down in the very bottom corner. I'm then going to come back up here to the top, and I'm going to change my renderer to classic. I'm going to leave lit as lit. Okay. I am going to go to lighting, and this is where you can choose different environments. One that works particularly well for objects is the Environment Studio. Provides kind of a lighting situation as though you're in a studio. One other one that we typically use with our students is the Tokyo Big Sight, but that's a little bit dark for this one, so I'm going to go back up, and I have one that is unfortunately no longer available on Sketchfab, but that I like to use is Studio 2, and it's default still in my account because I used it on models before they did away with the texturing, or the lighting. Then what I can do is I can change the orientation of the lights in terms of where they hit the model. So by dragging this sideways, I can get the lighting to come into the front of the model. I can also make it brighter or darker. I can go into post-processing, and I can turn sharpness on, which is going to make the image texture a little bit sharper. You can change how sharp it is with the slider by expanding sharpness, but anything more than about 20 starts to get, it's just like sharpening an image in Photoshop. It tends to get a little bit grainy and doesn't look very good. So we'll stick with 20 there. One last thing I'll show you. We'll go back to the first tab, the scene tab, or the gear, and I'm going to change my renderer temporarily to matte cap. That lets us see the underlying geometry, but I can add some detail to that by when it's in matte cap, go up here to materials, and I can scroll down to where it says normal bump map, turn that on, expand that, click on bump map, and then in this black square over here, click the down and choose my texture file that was uploaded. And then I can add some more detail in by dragging the strength of the bump map, and you can see how some of that carving starts to show up in the model. So there it is with no bump map, and there it is as I crank the bump map up. It starts to basically artificially create the appearance of geometry from the texture file, from the image pixels. Then what I want to do is go back here, put back on classic rendering, and I believe that's all of the ones that you really need to worry about in terms of presenting your model nicely in Sketchfab. Last thing to do is get an initial view that you like. That's the view that people are going to see when it pops up. Once you have it positioned the way you like and zoomed in as far as you like it, then you can say save view, saves that initial camera view, save my settings, and then if I want to make it publicly available, I can then publish my model to the world. If you don't publish it, it'll stay private, and when it's private, you can share it with people by clicking sorry, I do need to go back to change that to private model. Here we go. Save, and then I take that back about the publishing. I do need to publish it, but now publish it privately. Okay, and it's been published privately. You can give this link to people to find it. If they have that link, they can get to your model. Or if you just publish it publicly, anyone can find it and get to the model. So that concludes this very rapid photo scan tutorial, and I hope this really helps you, Alan. And again, sorry for all the delays in getting this to you.